Welcome to Car Salvage 101 on YouTube, and today's video we are going to be discussing buying a used Fiat 500. So in this video, if you're looking to buy one for yourself, maybe for a family member, I'm going to try and do a video discussing these two cars here and what you need to look for when buying the cars. Now, I appreciate everyone is different with what they look for, and some people know their ins and their outs. Other people are, have very basic knowledge of cars. So I just want to sort of condense it down, and hopefully it's of some use to you. If I miss something out, I do apologise, but I'm going to try and cover it as much as possible. So with this car here, the Fiat 500 Lounge, we're going to do the external, and with the Fiat 500 Lounge over there, we're going to do the internal. So let's start. First off, what I would say with this is these are 1.2 petrol, 69 brake horsepower, and this is, in my opinion, is your best choice. Best engine, not the twin air, and it's the Lounge, which is more desirable for the fact that we'll quickly go into it. As you can see, it's got alloy wheels, it has chrome trim on the front here, it has chrome trim here running along the sides, it has a glass roof, not a sunroof, a glass roof. It has air conditioning, and it has Bluetooth, so you can connect your phone to take calls. One thing that it doesn't do, which some people think it does, is they think it streams music through Bluetooth. It doesn't do that. You have to connect the phone via a USB cable. There is also a chrome strip on the bumper at the back as well, which you don't get, as you can see there, which you don't get. So that predominantly is the difference. You also get rear headrests as well. Otherwise, it is exactly the same car, the Lounge and the Pop, exactly the same, but these are more desirable just because of those extras. But because it's desirable, you do pay more. So without further ado, let's have a look around the outside of the car. So if you follow my channel, you'll know that I buy Fiat 500s with category N and S, and also undamaged. Category N is where you might have damage to a panel, let's say here, this side panel here, and the insurance company has decided that it's too costly to repair and paint, and therefore they write the car off, and the insurance company take ownership of it. They pay out the owner of the car with the market value, and then they send this to auction. That's when the likes of myself and people like Paul at Love 500 purchase them from, and quite simply we will unbolt this panel here, a bit like Lego, unbolt it and put a new panel on, and hey presto, you've got a car pretty much looking exactly the same as if it came out of the factory. That is a Cat N. It's basically anything which is bolt on, bolt off. So bumpers, the bonnet, door, smashed window, maybe suspension damage, something like that. Okay. Cat S, more structural. So you're kind of looking at something that's probably been involved in a fairly heavy impact, and it has damaged the car to the point that it's not going to be a bolt on, bolt off job, i.e. you have damage underneath here. So you've hit a big rock or something and it's dented underneath the car. You've got damage here, for example, where you can't just replace that. So you'd either have to fill it, or you potentially you could have a rear quarter panel, but it would be welded in. In behind this, the bumper here is what they call a slam panel and a crash bar, and you've got legs. You've got one either side, and they stick out. Now those legs could be bent because it's taken the impact and it's absorbed the impact and it's bent the leg. So the insurance company and the garages look over the damage and they decide whether or not it is structural, and the damage basically cannot be repaired without some sort of major repair to it. Again, because of category S and category Ns, you are looking at a lower value to the car, so just be prepared that, for example, an uncrashed car like this, for example, could be worth say 5 grand, and a Cat N or Cat S might be worth 4 grand. A Cat N will not show on the V5, so when you check the V5 it will not say that it's been involved in an accident. If it's a Cat S, it should be reissued with a V5 that says Cat S on the front page. The other option is that you HPI check it online, and it should tell you when the accident was and what it was registered as. So again, that's a brief history, okay, of cars. Now, what I would also say is you can have a unrecorded damage, which is that the car has been involved in an accident, they've chosen not to go through the insurance, and therefore the car's been replaced, you know, what it might be, had the whole front done or it's had the side done, and the person's gone, you know what, I'm just going to pay for this myself and not go through insurance because they're worried it's going to hike up their insurance, or that they've forgot to protect their no claims or something along those lines. You potentially will never know, but there are always signs that the car has been in an accident, and we'll just go through that now for you. So, first things first, when you're looking at the car side on, the main thing from this side, apart from with potentially the main thing is looking for colour differences in the paintwork. You might find that when you look at the car, whatever the colour of the 500 is, that the paint doesn't match the panel. So for example here, this quarter panel might be a different colour to the door panel, or this wheel arch here might be a different colour to the door, in which case it's had a different panel. Okay, again, it doesn't mean too much, you know. If you're getting a 2014, let's say, Fiat 500, and they put on a 2013 wing here, the white is going to be ever so slightly different, ever so slightly. Okay, the only way you're ever going to get a completely different complete side where it's all the same colours if it's had a complete respray and all of those panels have been blended and matched. So that's quite an expensive job. So from this angle we are looking for, and I'll point to it here, it's mainly around this side here, and it's on the same as well. You're looking for dents in this front here, and it's called the sill, where someone, and it's not always, you've either been driving and you've gone over a big rock and it's damaged the underside here, or the mechanic has been jacking the car up to take off, say, this wheel, and he's dented the underside here using his jack. Now this is part of the car, okay, unlike a BMW, which I'll briefly show you. Here, this is plastic, and if you dent that, I say dent it, you bend it, you can replace it. But with these, you can't do that. This is metal, okay? Doesn't really affect, well, it just doesn't affect the car, but you can, if you know what you're looking for, you can see whether or not that's had a dent normally in there, okay? Caused, I'd normally say, most of the time by a mechanic. So otherwise, that side of the car, generally on the whole, is very unaffected. Since we're on the side of the car, look for door handle problems. So here you've got it slightly loose here, so that's a replacement of a hinge potentially, but if it's completely broken, then ultimately you're never going to get in the door. So you have to look at this. What I would say is to open the car door, don't pull more from here, but pull from here, and do that. That way it doesn't put so much pressure on the hinge. Always look for this, and that's the same with the driver's side as well, because these require a potential replacement handle, which is only about £25, but the work and labour to get in behind it and sort it out is a good few hours. Also, notice that you've got this goes without saying, obviously, on all cars, check the treads and look for sign that there's some wear on the top here, and that if there's wear coming that's not even, then you've got a tracking problem. If we move around to the front, DRLs have a tendency to pop. You should get a warning light on the dashboard to let you know that one of them's gone, so just check on that. And again, that's the same on the other side. To get into those, you can kind of see it here, that you can get into there. Ironically, the panel is missing from that side, so you can get in through that. If we scoot around, generally on the whole on the front, it's not too bad. You do get a bit of cracking on the top here, paint cracking with some older 500s, and the Fiat badge does tend to get a bit faded as well, if you can live with that. Again, a bit of cracking can develop on this part on the top here as well. And again, sort of from this side, you wouldn't necessarily tend to know. I have had a few cars where this has started to fray and break, and you can get replacement panels like this, either from a breaker or from China, and they are simply clipped on, so they are quite easy to remove. You take this bottom clip out here, pull that away, and then take that off. On the top, you might get these go missing. These are clipped in, and if you ever need to remove the wipers themselves, these need to come off, and they are quite brittle. Again, in China, AliExpress, you can pick these up, so those could be missing. Also look out for, obviously, cracks to the windscreen, and you tend to get, as you can kind of see here a bit, it's not really that severe, but you will find that these actually are quite cheap to replace. The glass roof is not cheap. You'll find that getting auto glass to replace that is actually difficult. It's probably going to be easier to find that from a scrapyard, and then get a window fitter to try and do it yeah, he might be able to do it, but they are probably around 250 quid to get those replaced. That is the front and the sides, which I don't really feel is generally too bad. Again, these have a tendency to pop out. These bumpers can pop out. It doesn't really do anything. It just makes it look a tiny bit untidy, but these can pop out every so often. If the bumpers come out off at some point, then yeah, you can see there that this bumper's not been off, but you can just see that the line is a bit, is a bit off. If we go around to the right hand side again, you're looking for any form of dents, anything like that to the door or to the rear quarters, anything like that, which again can be anything from cars being pushed in. It is a bit fragile, I'm not going to lie. They are quite thin metal and it can be like that. If we look around to the back, these are common to need replacing. They are relatively cheap, but again, you can kind of see here, this actually probably needs replacing at some point. It'll still work, but it does need replacing. And in this case, it's very, very dirty and very, well, yeah, a bit rusty. These have a tendency that they can, every so often, the switch can go on them. But again, you can buy this whole part and unscrew that from the inside of the boot. But on the whole, I've never had to do that yet. Otherwise, things like rear third brake lights, they're actually quite good. Not a problem there. Again, these badges do fade as well. And again, you are looking at cracking, paint cracking that runs along this bumper here, which can also occur. I've got one, actually this one over there, where this is actually starting to unclip. These are common to disappear as well. I've noticed loads of driving around with the toe eye missing. Again, you can pick those up from China and they just clip in plastic. Aerial, this is a common problem on, or can be a common problem on Fiat 500s, where you'll lose the radio reception. And on this case, ironically on this car, the radio reception has totally gone. And no matter how much searching you do, it just won't pick up a radio station. So you need to access underneath the boot. So when you pull the boot up, you remove the headliner from underneath here and unscrew this base here. It's a relatively simple job, and you then just pull the wires out and replace it, and that should do it. But I believe water gets in there and just frazzles the mechanism or the chip that's in there. Otherwise, colour wise, white is always good, greys are always good, blues are always good. The only colour I'd tell you to avoid would be red. Red on most cars, I say most cars, German cars it doesn't tend to so much. On Fiats and Alphas, although the Alpha here actually is in pretty good nick for 2012, but you do start to notice around the bonnet and on the top of the roof the lacquer peeling and starting to flake off. And that's going to require a respray, so just be prepared that red can be problematic when it comes to buying a car. If it hasn't peeled and it's a 2008 to 2010, then it's doing very, very well for itself. But overall, they are quite generally reliable cars. From the front, nothing just generally falls off. And it's quite basic from the front. If we briefly talk about the underside of the car, the main two issues probably with 500s is the exhaust blowing and the oil sump starting to corrode away. The exhaust itself is very basic. It simply runs directly from the middle pretty much all the way down to the back box at the rear, and it's normally the back box that tends to start blowing. It is, how to describe it, the black box has two layers of metal. The outer layer tends to, on again newer older cars, where it's not been replaced, it basically starts to break up. MOT advisories might bring that up. It doesn't affect the integrity of the exhaust, it's just one of the layers is starting to corrode, and you can pretty much just pick away at it. So But yeah, you wouldn't necessarily notice a blowing exhaust, because these exhausts do sound a bit raspy. But yeah, exhaust can be an issue. The other one obviously is the oil sump, which I did say. What you'll find is that where the oil sump meets the engine, that can start to corrode, so you might get a small oil leak coming from that. So when you look under the car, obviously look for oil patches underneath to see whether or not you've got anything leaking, and see if you really want to get underneath it, you can have a look to see if you can see actually any wet black oil coming from basically the front underneath the engine. And whilst you're there, although it's not a failure, but it will come up as an advisory, you do also have a front exhaust bracket, which most of the cars 500s that I've had tend to have eaten that exhaust bracket. Again, it doesn't affect the exhaust or anything like that, but it does come up as an advisory, and again, it's at the front when the exhaust comes down, and that tends to go as well. Otherwise, luckily, it's a very basic car. It doesn't have under trays or anything like that, so yeah, it's a basic car underneath. Okay, so now let's move on to the interior and what we're looking for inside a Fiat 500. Now I'm going to go through, from what I can remember to be problems, things that I've dealt with in 500s. It's going to be easier if I zoom out. So let's start with the left hand side here. So on the whole, these are all pretty reliable. The handles on the inside are all reliable. The vent on the left, never generally have an issue with that. The bonnet release down here, again, no real issue at all. Always look, if you've got alloy wheels, always look for this. If you don't know what it is, alloy wheels for Fiats have locking wheel nuts to stop people stealing them, and you need this in order to get the wheel off. In this case, this car didn't have one, so I've had to purchase one, and they've all got unique little patterns to allow you to get the alloy off. If you don't have that, yeah, you're stumped. So if we move across, these are very common to break. They either don't go left to right, or they don't move up and down, and they're all individual plastic is all broken. And that can be quite common, where people have been forcing it, or over the years they've put some sort of mobile phone clamp or something on there, and they just break. So just check those as well. Again, a bit like what I said with the aerial on the radio, when you turn it on, always check to see whether or not it's actually picking up a radio station. If it doesn't pick up a radio station, then that aerial has gone, and it needs replacing. Then as we scroll down here, again, no real issues with anything like the steering or the rear fog light or the hazards. Nothing really a problem there. I've had one now, although again, whether it's that common, I have had one where when you turn on the fan, the only time you hear the actual fan running is when it's on 4 and it's blasting out air. If you don't get any air on 3, 2 or 1, then the heater matrix, the resistor that is buried deep underneath this dashboard, has gone, and that needs replacing. Again, that's not an easy job to do. The part itself is about a tenner, but it's just trying to get to it is an absolute pain. So again, just check to make sure that all the speeds of the fans work. Otherwise, again, all this area here, not a problem. As we look down here, this leather part can be a bit hazardous. You can see here it's got little tears where over the years your fingers have, or if you've got for example, rings on or something have just caught it a bit, and you can get small tears. It's very fragile. You also got a plastic ring that goes on the inside here, and that plastic ring allows this to sit and clip to this actual panel here. Again, this can break, and you'll know about it because all of this is really wobbly and the whole thing almost comes away. Again, the plastic clip is pretty cheap, and to be fair, anyone can really do it themselves. And then if we go down to here, this is your USB port here. Not all cars have them. The Pops don't have them, but that is where you can connect your phone. But again, people who've spilt drinks in the past, because these cup holders aren't the best, they can cause issues here. Again, you're not going to notice that really until you plug in a USB cable and check it on your phone. Handbrake. Let me just turn this around. The handbrake, if you've got to pull this up really high, then this handbrake wiring needs adjusting. It's not serious. It just means that if your handbrake is pulled up a bit, then it's quite tight. If you have to pull it up, then it needs tightening. Again, you can remove this plastic panel all here, and at the back here it's a nut, and then you can take this off and you can tighten the handbrake wire here. If we scroll across here, again, what we'd probably start with is this, the speedo. Very common, very common. Again, I've probably replaced about 6 on Fiat 500s, where you have two problems here. Number one, you've lost this middle screen, LCD screen here, so it doesn't display anything, so you don't know how much fuel you've got, you don't know the time, etc. The other problem is where you have the lights, for example, to say that your seatbelt's not on, or the start stop is inactive, etc. Those are lit up. Now, at night time, it stands out more. If you're at night and all those lights, or let's say 60% of those lights are lit and for no reason at all, or another one is when you turn the indicators left or right, you start to see almost like a Christmas tree of flashing little lights. That means that the speedo's had it. So you're going to need a new speedo. Some people will replace this, but actually it's a lot easier just to replace the speedo, to be fair. But yeah, so you have problems with the outside and problems with the inside here. And that's I've learnt to do that job in probably about half hour, to be fair, to replace it. It's not too bad in the end. Off the back, I guess, of the speedo is flashing mileage. If your mileage is flashing, and I've counted probably about 2 videos now where I've done it, where if it's flashing, you need to either disconnect the battery and give it 10 minutes, reconnect the battery and see if it stops flashing. If it doesn't stop flashing, your Bluetooth module is corrupted and you need to sort that out. It doesn't happen. Not everyone has said it's happened, but if it's flashing, the chances are it's also draining your battery. So you need to get that Bluetooth module sorted. Now, your Bluetooth module, ignore the tyres, is behind this panel here. So you need to remove all of this to get to the Bluetooth module, which is riveted in, and you need to take that out and then send it off. Go to Love 500 on YouTube, and there is a video and he'll show you where to send it, because he does them and repairs them. Then you get it back, put it back in, and you do need to do a bit of software updates with a laptop, and your mileage will stop flashing. So yeah, so that's another one there. Otherwise, things like airbag issues, it's not a problem. The controls, not an issue. I haven't come across them at all. The wing mirror operation here, again, never had an issue either. One other thing that I can think of that comes up is we sometimes get some issues in regards to what they call ESC unavailable, and it comes up here. That's probably because of a brake switch that is just under here. It's actually quite easy to get to, and you can see it. It just literally needs unclipping and the brake switch replacing, and that is sorted. Yeah, I'm trying to think of anything else really from the interior. Otherwise, one other thing I probably should say. Again, I've encountered it once, but I'm not 100% sure, to be honest, that it was an issue with the car. It was more to do with the fact that I was working on it in the rain. Check for water. So by putting your hand down here, and if you can see water that almost starts to come up, then you've got water within underneath this. If that is the case, you've got a leak somewhere, either from the window, or it's just getting in from somewhere else. So yeah, water can be obviously that as well. Otherwise, that is pretty much it from the interior. So let's just do a final tour of the engine bay, just to show you what I'd look for in the engine bay. Right, very simple, easy-ish to work on engines. This one's not been cleaned, so that's why it's a bit dirty, so just ignore that. Okay, this is your coolant. So need to check to make sure that the coolant level is at the right height. You've got a minimum and maximum down there, as you can probably see. Get a torch to make sure that it's on maximum. You don't really want that to be running on low. Windscreen washer fluid, obviously that's not the biggest problem if you run out, but you're going to fail an MOT if you do. Engine oil is in here. It's been topped up recently, hence why it's got some residue there, and this is the dipstick. So just check to make sure that, like anything, when you pull out the dipstick, that there is oil on it. If it's completely and utterly black, you need an oil change, I'd suggest. Cam belt. Cam belts, generally, if you don't know the paperwork or they can't talk to you about it, one of the telltale signs is there's normally a white sticker that goes, I'll show you from this angle actually, it runs down here. It's a rectangular white sticker, and it goes over this screw hole here. If the white sticker is not here, or it's been pulled back, there's a good chance that the cam belt has been replaced, so you're at least a bit of peace of mind knowing it's been replaced at some point. That is your only telltale sign it's been done, other than someone presenting you with paperwork. The air box or the air filter is in here, so that's 6 bolts. You're never going to know if that's done until you take out those 6 bolts. And pretty much everything else is fairly self-explanatory. If you ever want to take the negative off because you want to test that Bluetooth module, this is the negative. Just press that in and pull that off. It's nice and easy. This has a tendency to come loose. It breaks, it snaps because it's plastic, it's quite brittle, and what you'll hear mainly is generally when you take off in first, there's a big vibration, and it goes within a second or so. So just look out for that breaking, and this pipe here just wobbling around. Again, doesn't affect the car, but it's worth noting as well. And that's it from the front. Again, I don't know if you can see it. These here, if we point down, these are the legs. So you've got one that side, and you can just about see it in here. That's the other leg. If they're bent, so you can quite clearly see if they're bent or not, then you know that this has been in an accident, and I'd walk away because they've not been bent back. If the car starts to turn over slowly, then I'd suggest spark plugs and the coil pack need looking at. So again, just take off the air filter box, and it's all underneath here as well. If you start smelling petrol, I'd suggest that the breather pipe that's at the back of the box has come off. It's a pipe that runs at the back there. Two other things that I can think of. If you hear running water, it's one of two things. It's either you've got some little gullies, little plastic little things, I can just feel it just at the back here, they fill with gunk from trees and everything like that where you've parked. There's another one here, and they fill up, and it means that the water doesn't drain off the back in here, and they basically just fills with water. So you need to get to these plastic bits here and take them out, give them a clean, and the water then drains nicely from within underneath this here. If you still hear water, then the chances is that it's your it's the coolant. It might have some air in it, and we need to do some releasing of air to get that water. Now, what I would say is when we go back to this car here, when you sit in the car, you start the car, and you hear like rushing water from sort of around this sort of area here, behind here, then I would suggest that you need to release some air from the sort of the coolant, because there's air trapped in that. So that's what, yeah, you need to do there. Again, if you're buying it, I wouldn't worry too much, because you can do that pretty much yourself with a YouTube video. Right, so last but not least, the boot. Biggest problem here is this. This has a tendency that it's quite fragile. The wires are very, very thin inside, and the constant opening, shutting throughout the years will wear away those wires. You'll start to notice a problem if you come to buy or look to buy one of these Fiat 500s, and that wiper blade up there is not horizontal, and it's slightly up, or when you turn the ignition on, that wiper blade just goes like 2 or 3 times and then stops. That is your problem, and you need to have that looked at. Again, it is quite common on a Fiat 500. Otherwise, right, so what you're looking for underneath here is your space saver tyre and the kit that comes with it. If you do need that kit, and you also want to check the VIN plate, which is on here, and make sure that that matches your V5 as well. People lose a lot of stuff underneath here, and the amount of cars that I've had where so much stuff is underneath that tyre is incredible. If you've got water within this within the wheel well here, you've got a leak. More so on the convertible version of the 500 as well, because yeah, then you've definitely got a roof leak and the water is getting into there as well. Otherwise, these aren't the best. They're it's very cheaply made. They eventually unstuck over the years, and you can see that this should sit nicely in here. It's just not particularly, so that's, yeah, nothing really much you can do about that, to be honest. And then finally, double check this as well, because this does again have a tendency to undo itself over the years, and that can rattle around, but that just needs tightening there. Otherwise, that is what I would suggest when you're looking at your Fiat 500. We'll lock that up, and there's one other thing that I would probably discuss with you guys if you were looking to buy it, and that's finally, it's your test drive. So when you're test driving these, what you're looking for is power. If you're putting your foot to the floor and it's taking forever, then it would again suggest that you might need your spark plugs or core pack looked at. Over the years, I've had some really nippy Fiat 500s. They literally are nippy, and some that are very sluggish, and they've eventually required spark plugs or the core pack to be looked at. Alternators, they can go, they can seize. You'll know about it because as you start the car, if there's a screeching noise and smoke starts coming from the bonnet, the chances are the belt and everything is now slipping and jamming, and your alternator has completely seized up. Again, that's normally on older ones as well. And one other thing actually I've picked up on 500s is sometimes the steering wheel isn't completely straight. So when you look at it and you straighten up you're driving along, the steering wheel might be slightly to the left or slightly to the right. Don't let that worry you. Again, over the years, somehow the steering wheel has slightly moved. The car, I've had like tracking checked and it seems to be fine. The steering wheel itself isn't loose, it's just, that's what it is. There's no real reason behind it, so don't worry too much about that at all. But yeah, maybe just check to make sure to see if tracking has been done, because sometimes tracking can sort it. Otherwise, tracking is generally not too bad on these. They're quite easy to sort out, but again, you need a garage to do that. And I think finally, the only other thing I'd probably say is brake pads and brake discs. If you're buying it privately, you might find that someone's gone through their brake pads quite a bit. The 500s, again, it seems to pick up on 500s more. You tend to get what they call a lip on the disc. It's either on the back of the disc or it's on the front, but it's always on the outside. And effectively, it's literally a lip. So when you're braking, you can hear what it sounds a bit like metal on metal a bit. It's not the smoothest. It means potentially you're going to need your brake discs changed. If there's real noise, like generally when you're going along and it sounds mechanical, metal on metal, the chances are there's pretty much no brake pad left, and I would get that straight in to a garage to have a look at the brake pads. I've had some shocking 500s where there's been pretty much no brake pad left. So yeah, any sort of metal on metal as well. Knocking sounds, if you get any knocking generally going over a pothole, even a small like speed bump, then the chances are that certainly from the front, that your lower arms need replacing, because they tend to wear quite a bit. Again, it's the same if you're going over and you see it more to the back, then the rear shockers need replacing. The shockers are a lot easier and cheaper, let me tell you, to do those. So yeah, knocking at the back is the shockers, knocking at the front generally is the lower arms, but don't discount the fact that they might need the shock absorbers replacing as well. Can't tell you on labour costs, but a shock absorber should be about 70 quid. A lower arm should be, depending on where you get them, they might charge you 30 to 40 pound for a lower arm, but again, the labour cost is a good few hours to sort out as well. And yeah, I think that's it. I'm sure there's probably other stuff that I could bring up, and You know, I'm no expert. I don't build these or anything like that. It's just my own personal intake on the car. So if you're thinking about buying them, good luck with your purchase. Feel free to drop any comments, because obviously people who are watching these might want to look at the comments if in case I've missed anything in particular. And yeah, happy hunting. Until next time, see you all soon. Hit the thumbs up button if you found this helpful, and good luck.